Good morning. My name is Richard Wexler, and this is episode 10 of our podcast entitled Elder Education, Solutions, and Resources to Navigate Aging and Care. So a little recap like we do on every episode. 18 years ago, my wife, myself, and our two small children began an unbelievable journey of taking care of all four of our parents. It lasted 14 years. It created our business, Points of Life, where we have been able to provide that education, those solutions, and those resources to thousands around the country, individuals and families. And the whole idea of the podcast is to reach even more. So here we are, episode 10. What are we going to do today? We're going to do a little recap of where we've been in the first 9 episodes and where we're going. So if you've heard most of our episodes, you kind of get the idea that I'm pretty big into a certain word, and that word is planning. And we've had multiple guests on so far that have been talking about that subject as well. Folks, I get it. There's so much going on in everybody's life. It's not something you think about. My older mom, my older dad, my in-laws, my grandparents. I hear comments all the time. They're doing great. My grandparents live in this community. They play golf, they play bridge, they play checkers. They're very active. My parents are doing X, Y, and Z. That's awesome. And we hope most of us have a long, healthy, prosperous life where we can do that as well. But a word that I use a lot, stuff, happens. A lot of times it happens quite a bit later on, maybe 85 or beyond. And as we've talked about with medicine and medication, we're seeing folks live a lot longer. Or sometimes stuff happens a little bit sooner. So what we're urging folks to do is have that conversation with your older loved ones. We have, in our episodes, talked about how you can do that. We're going to keep on talking about that here and there as we move on to new episodes because we truly believe it's very important. What I've found out personally and what I've found out professionally, when there's a great plan or somewhat of a plan, it helps. It helps you understand, especially like in my episodes about mom falling, kids not living close, the adult children. That's typical. So mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whomever that is, what's going to happen to them and who's going to be there to take care of them? So with this podcast, we're also trying to provide a lot of education, not only about planning, but about this process and the journey. Something happens, like mom breaks her hip, somebody has a stroke, there's a cancer diagnosis, and maybe it's a diagnosis where someone's still going to live for a period of time and they're going to battle that disease. And what does it mean to that individual? And what does it mean to the family? And also, I'm not sure how much we've talked about this, but what happens when, let's say mom and dad are still with us, pick someplace in the country where they live, but they didn't have any children. Or maybe they had one child. What's going to happen then? That's where that mom and dad, let's say they're both doing pretty well. They're both around 85 years of age. They've had no children. Should they talk about this? Not talk about this? I mean, my gut's telling me they really should be talking about this. Understanding if something happens to one of them, what's the other one going to do? Or that situation where mom and dad, again, pick someplace in the country, and the one child, let's say the one child lives close. Let's say they live a couple miles, 10 miles away. No conversation, something happens. That child, let's say they're married. Let's say they have kids. Kind of like what we talked about in Help Mom Fell. I mean, what are they going to do? Are they going to go take care of mom, dad, whomever it may be? How are they going to manage their life? What's going to happen in that situation? Or if that child lives 100 miles, 500 miles, 2 or 3 states away from mom and dad, same questions. What's going to happen? What's that child going to do? What's going to happen with their marriage, their partner, their girlfriend, their boyfriend? Do they have children? Do they have a job? All these things that through the education and through the guests that we're bringing on, we want people to realize, I know it's not fun. And I know you'd rather be talking about something else, but we really need to understand this journey. And I'm not saying everyone's going to wind up in a 14-year journey like we did. If it's a year, if it's 6 months, 2 years, whatever it may be, it's a lot. When maybe you're trying to help your loved ones and you still have your own life to manage as well. You know, where's normally, and we've talked about this, the first place that someone ends up? In the hospital. Let's say that individual, the adult children, have been really fortunate and never really had much experience with a hospital. You need to understand how to navigate that institution. We're going to bring on guests in the future that their job is to help you do that and help you potentially have conversations with the nurses, with the discharge planner, with the doctor or doctors, etc. We talk a lot about having a conversation, understanding as mom or dad or grandparents, whomever, go through this process in the hospital, what's next for them. And we're trying to really give you knowledge of that. Whether they go home, and we've talked about this with home health, because they still need a physical therapist, physical therapist or occupational therapist, or they wind up going to skilled nursing or a rehab. We're going to bring more guests on that also work in skilled nursing. Then we've talked about, okay, when mom or dad, grandparents get through the skilled nursing process, what's next? Going home. Who's going to take care of them at home? Are you going to look for a small in-home care in their community or a larger home care franchise? Are you going to be looking at an assisted living? Is it a situation where memory care is needed and maybe you're looking at a memory care facility? Are you going to be working with a placement agent, senior placement agent like we talked about. We're going to bring some of those folks on. Then we get to that really difficult one little word called cost. And we've talked about this. What's it going to cost? And you've heard me in prior episodes. It's not cheap. And 5 years from now, 10 years from now, what's it going to do? It's only going to get more expensive. We're going to bring in financial planners. We're going to bring in estate planners. The conversations that someone should be having quite a few years before hopefully something happens to their older loved ones or themselves. It used to be you save for college, you save for retirement. Well, nowadays you need to be saving for this little four-letter word called care, whether it is helping out loved ones or yourself. And I think Barbara brought this up in our last episode about not wanting to be a burden on your children if you're the 50-year-old or the 60-year-old or whatever age you may be. And hopefully when something happens to you, and hopefully it's quite a few years from now, it's easier on them. We're also going to talk about Medicare and Medicaid. And this, we've talked about this in past episodes. People have this thought process. Mom is in her 80s now. She's been on Medicare for 20 plus years. That Medicare is going to pay for that long-term care. Not the way it was set up. We've talked about that. We're going to bring in some Medicare experts. We're going to talk about Medicaid with experts. We're going to talk about how you qualify for Medicaid, but we're also going to talk about, which I brought up in past episodes, where can you live on Medicaid dollars? Will home care come in and take that as their full payment? Most of the time, no. Will an assisted living take that as their full payment? Most of the time, no. So I hope you guys can understand this, but the more you understand, look at me. I didn't understand a lot of this before our four parents got ill. It was trial and error, make a lot of mistakes. What I'm trying to do on this podcast is help you not make those same mistakes that we made, to understand a lot more about this whole process before it starts. Because I talk about it'll never be easy, but with the knowledge and the solutions we're going to talk about and the resources, we'll talk more about that in a few minutes, that we're trying to bring to you folks. Because as I say, it is a journey. 2 months, 3 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years. We haven't talked a lot so far about dementia and Alzheimer's. We're going to, with experts. And one thing that we're seeing out there, a lot of people that have dementia or Alzheimer's, which is a form of dementia, their body is okay, but their mind isn't. There's a lot of different forms they can possibly get. And then what do? How do you take care of those folks? Can you take care of them in the home? Is that going to work? Or do you need to move someone to a memory community or facility where they're geared to help folks with memory issues? But look at the reality too. A lot of folks in that situation, their body is okay, their mind isn't. They need care for a long time. Again, is that the family providing it? Is that someone coming in the home? Are they moving to a community or facility? And what does that all mean? Cost. So we're going to talk a lot about dementia. We're going to talk a lot about Alzheimer's as we move forward. One of the things we just started, it's about a week old. I think I've talked about this. We've put together, you can find this on our website, you can find this on the host site for the podcast. We'll probably put it more places that I'll tell you about, an elder care resource guide. There's over 20 some odd different subjects, from home care to assisted livings to Medicare to financial planners, and it goes on and on and on. Right now, we're just starting. It's got about 4 or 5 folks listed in there. But our goal is to literally have this, I think it says from Alabama through Wyoming. We want it all over the country. We want you to have the ability, if you need help in a given city, to hopefully be able to find the folks that are those solutions, the folks that are those resources in all different areas of elder care near where you live, near where mom lives or dad lives or the grandparents or the in-laws. Again, we're trying to make this as easy as possible. If you're listening to this and you'd like to be a part of our guide, connect with me via the email that I'll give you in a few minutes. Our whole goal, as I've said many times, trying to make this easier. Folks, been doing this a long time. There's a lot going on in this country, but this subject really doesn't get talked about. The same way it doesn't get talked about in the family home. The same way it's difficult to pick up the phone and call mom or dad or grandparents and talk about this issue. We're trying to create that national conversation. We're trying to get a lot of people from a lot of different areas within elder care to be talking about this. We have a lot of people, as we've talked about the numbers, that are over 50 right now. With the approximately 80 million boomers who are aging, including myself, this is going to change this country over the next 15, 20 years. It already is. We've talked about the broader subject. Barbara and I talked about it briefly. We're going to talk about it in more depth about how this is going to affect society and what's going to happen. Maybe you are the only child, but maybe you can't afford care from home care or sending mom or dad to an assisted living. And the family, the daughter, the son, the grandchild, is the only one that can provide the care. What's that going to do from a larger perspective? Are people literally going to have to walk away from their life, walk away from their jobs to take care of folks? We're going to talk about that on a broader perspective. We don't want this subject matter dark. It's tough. I've been telling people, I've stood in front of so many people over the last 18 years, and I tell them, it's a tough subject matter. I wish it wasn't, but it is. Our goal is to get you guys educated. Our goal is to provide those solutions. Our goal is to provide those resources. So if you see that it's coming, you saw mom and dad a couple months ago, they're changing. Maybe from a memory standpoint, from a mobility standpoint, or you're already in it. You're trying to take care and or manage mom, dad, grandparents, their care. We want to help you. and we want to make sure that this is all working as well as it possibly can. You're finding those solutions. You're finding those resources. We're going to talk about what the caregiver should be doing. It's a lot of wear and tear and stress on the caregivers. I know, we've been through it. What should that caregiver be doing? From many different perspectives. Again, some of the guests we're going to have. If you have other suggestions, other comments, things you want us to talk about, reach out per the email I'm about to give you. You got a pen? eldered2023 at gmail.com. ELDERED2023 at gmail.com. Reach out. Let us know what you're thinking. Let us know if you need help. We'll try and connect you with those resources and solutions that you need. We're looking forward to moving on to the next episodes, bringing you a lot more information, bringing you a lot more guests, and simply trying to help. So folks, until we talk again, have yourself an awesome day.